The PlayStation 5 is exactly what you'd expect from Sony's next-gen console. The actual experience of playing the PlayStation 5 is quite honestly a delight. Playing Spider-Man Miles Morales from start to finish, basically every moment was beautifully rendered, even without the nicest television in the world, which is likely going to be the experience for many. And perhaps best of all, the load times are practically non-existent. The physical aspect of the console is admittedly a bit awkward. The size and slight flaring of the outer shell basically means it'll need to find a dedicated spot all its own to sit. And while there have been some reports about the heat that next-gen consoles put off, running the PS5 in performance mode on Miles Morales for several hours never made it hot enough to cook eggs, but it was certainly very warm to the touch. Even with all the cooling power under the hood, you'll want to make sure wherever it's stored is well ventilated. It's hard to say just how much of an influence the glorious new DualSense controller will be for the PS5. While Astro's Playroom, which comes free with the console, is basically a large proof of concept for the controller's haptic feedback and adaptive triggers, our experience with Miles Morales basically left us wondering if we'd messed up the settings somehow. Barring the occasional thwip sound emanating from its speaker and some very subtle rumbling when, for example, taking the subway, it didn't seem to play much of a factor. It's also known that, for accessibility reasons, players will be able to tune this down or disable it entirely, which means all games will have to account for not using it anyway, not just third-party titles releasing on other platforms. If you've played a PS4 before, much of what you see on the PS5 will be immediately familiar. The improvements are largely down to games looking and loading better, and honestly, that's probably plenty for most folks. The DualSense controller looks good in your hand, and when used appropriately feels less like a gimmick and more like a baked-in feature. Miles Morales might not be exclusive to the PS5 thanks to also releasing on the PS4, but it makes a solid argument for picking up the PS5 regardless. For Comicbook.com, I'm Roland Bishop, and I approve this message.